Hello. So around this time, I had promised myself a vacation, and as you can see, I lied to myself. Welcome to the receipts. This is a special edition. This is not season two. Pretty soon, we will be announcing what season two is, but this is, I would say, a continuation of season one. And it is. I like to think of it, if you were to put it somewhere, if this is like Lion King versus Lion King 1.5, this would be the how to be an ally point 5. This is definitely that moment. Since last I saw you all, I had a bit of a conflict. I wanted to create the Black Theater Matters bill, which I'd write it, I'd get a bunch of people's thoughts on it, I'd go to all the unions, and we go to Congress. And then I went, you know what? That's kind of a level 100. That's a bit extreme. What if we just talk to everybody first and just try to get the unions and the producers and everyone to just agree on a new contract for BIPOC artists in these traditional spaces? Let's try it. So I looked at my opportunities. I saw what was out there, and a guy named Buzz Roddy reached out to me and was like, I really think you should run for delegate. And my initial thought was, thank you, but no. Until I thought about it and seeing how season one started with actors equity and ended very much still talking about actors equity, I felt like I was kind of touching an arena. And one of my thoughts, it kind of goes with Brene Brown. If you're not in the arena, I don't want to hear what you have to say. So practicing that, I thought it was important. So let's run for delegate. So I make the option, take it. I take Buzz on his offer. I run for delegate. And then I go, how do I want to do this? So I'm seeing how other people are announcing it. Other people are saying, I'm not going to campaign. I just want to talk about the issues and everything else. And I thought it was so funny. Like, it's just like anything you do is a campaign if you're running for, like, you can never turn it off. So I was looking at, well, what do I want my strategy to be? And then there was a guy named Ryan Morales who was like, hey, I think all the BIPOC people should join together and we should run together. And I was like, ooh, that's scary. So I was like, let me figure out what I want my strategy to be before we go in here. So there were three big things I wanted to do. Number one, I wanted to make sure that all the issues that were important to me and to people around me or to anyone that reached out were amplified. Number two, I think it's without a doubt that diversity, equity for all, and just these kind of things are very important. So figure out how to do that. And number three, I wanted to make sure that I did not win first. Like, I did not want to be at the top. I didn't want the bullseye on my head. I wanted to be able to navigate, just figure out how to do things. So I put all that together and I created this gatekeeper strategy in which I would figure out a way to position myself, because statistically it looked like I was going to comfortably win, but I could work to get everyone in that I thought would help get me where we need to go. So this idea of amplify, that word was very important to me. One, because transparency when it comes to actors equity is just, that word is just overused. It's overdone. So we go in there. I go in there with that idea. We amplify. I pitch this idea of, what if I just do interviews for everyone? And my idea was to get the most controversial people and to get the people who were BIPOC, who I thought were going to struggle a little bit, and try and make sure that we can get them to win, and also get anyone that's running that we consider an ally in. So the first person I chose was a white man who came out with these great statistics. And I was like, he's perfect, not for the statistics, but because I knew there was some drama. And I was like, this is a great moment, because as soon as we interview him, the drama is going to hit, and then he'll be able to come back and he's going to be able to do something that I wanted to do on the first episode of this show. I wanted to bring two people who are in conflict together and have them talk it out. When I reached out, he said no. He did not win. The rest of us did win. And moving forward, I still wanted to figure out, would this work? Are we in a place in the world or just in our community that we could sit down, talk about an issue that has hurt a lot of people, and find a path forward that is healing and actionable? So this special edition is a social experiment. And what I love is, and better yet, what's really cool is that today we're exploring Rock the Audition. We're exploring Sheri Sanders, who has decided to show up. Now, I first met Sheri when we were running for delegates. as delegates, as candidates. She reached out to us and was like, how do I amplify? What do I do? I believe in this. And we were like, well, an interview? And she was like, yes, I'm in it. Let's do it. And also, I'll just let you all know, I've brought back the microphone. I've brought back the old laptop just so you can see. Because again, I don't want to spoil all the season 2 things. And I've kind of, this isn't my home. We're just working with what we got. I know it's dramatic. The plant's dead a little bit, kind of the state of America. No, oh God, I'm getting off topic. But the point being that she showed up. And for me, I'll always have respect for people who are willing to put themselves on the line. It doesn't matter if you're in leadership. It doesn't matter if you're a conservative white woman. It doesn't matter like what the situation is. There's something really dangerous when, even directly, when someone of color reaches out to you, or someone who's Black reach out to you, or someone who is indigenous reach out to you and say, hey, I need you to show up, and you don't. There is something very dangerous about white silence. So today, we get to see someone come forward and go, let's put the brand on the line. The first time I had the interview, and management, if we can get in the Facebook and the YouTube, if someone can drop the link to that BIPOC interview, I think that's really good to know so people can compare and contrast after this show is over. In the interview with Sheri Sanders, she said something really cool. Can I get our transparency?
For opening my mouth. We're not in an industry that supports transparency. And that was a word you said earlier that I just wanted to circle back to. Transparency is how I've been existing for the last handful of years. I understand it's triggering because you're asking somebody to be authentic and honest about what's happening, but we cannot exist in an industry that is not transparent anymore, because it's in that sneakiness that people take Black people down, take people of color down, take LGBTQIA. It happens in the sneaky, quiet places. And that's why transparency is number one. And the fact
today, we're calling Sheri on her bluff. And for anyone that's going, what happened? Let's tell you in the form of a short by Napoleon M. Douglas.
On this special edition of The Receipts with Davon Williams.
Hello, teachers and coaches. It's Sheri Sanders from Rock the Audition.
Sheri Sanders, who, quote, is a professional performer and entrepreneur living with and leading with complex PTSD, who built a house of advocacy and education and artistry that didn't exist in the industry, end quote. She is the author of Rock the Audition, the Hal Leonard Brooks publication of 2011, and its second edition, which Sanders published herself in 2019. With her 2 books and her audition cuts on Music Notes, the world's leading digital sheet music retailer, Sheri has dedicated herself to passionately bridging the gap between popular music, musical theater, education, and advocacy. Her validity as an ally to BIPOC and disabled artists were called to question when Joanna Carpenter, New York City-based actor, singer, voiceover artist, educator, and organizer, came forward about a nightmare experience during a coaching with Sheri, as well as accounts from individuals and screenshots from Rock the Audition. The post unleashed both outrage and defense in the comments, focusing on both Sheri's written text and alleged actions. Joanna posed the question, what does accountability look like, not just for casting directors and creative teams, but for educators? Davon is ready to sit with Sheri and discuss the receipts to find the answer.
I love the credit at this. You're like, Yes. Yes.
It's so good. Oh my God. Oh.
It was so funny because we started experimenting with it at the end of season 1, and I was like, I feel like for this one, this should just be all Napoleon. This should just be all him. And you actually have a moment to work with him. You have 86 The Barrier.
Yeah.
Talk to me about it.
Oh, yeah. So 86 The Barrier is a grassroots language organization that I co-founded with my business partner, Cameron Shaw, back on May 1st. It was originally designed as a COVID response, but is now blowing up beyond our wildest dreams. So it's a language organization that serves to bring free peer-taught English as a new language lessons to non-English speaking hospitality workers. It's multi-pronged reasoning behind it. The first is the immediate, the fact that New York City is set to lose, looks like upwards of 35% at least of our bars and restaurants. And the folks who are, part of those ecosystems, and are also at the bottom of the socioeconomic totem pole, effectively are the first ones to lose out on growth opportunities. They're the first ones who cannot access government benefits, even in light of global pandemic. These are people who have families, who are at high risk, who very often are undocumented. And the English language is the single greatest barrier to entry to professional growth and thus financial stability. So Cameron and I, along with our team, Nicole Meneses, Stephanie Ortiz, and Shirley Mejia, 3 incredible women, we basically built a curriculum, an English as a new language curriculum, and we're working with 6 partners, that's the word we use for teachers, to just offer these one-on-one lessons. The program length is about 6 weeks right now. We're also in the process of building a Spanish as a new language parallel program because the overall aim is to make hospitality spaces, restaurants, bars, venues, linguistically equal rather than maintaining this kind of hierarchy, because most spaces are owned and operated and managed by cis white men. And we all know what happens when they're in charge. So, we're trying to change the culture. We're trying to change language away from it being a weapon against our immigrant communities, because hospitality is an industry that is literally built upon the backs of exploited labor. So we're trying to change that. And, there are things in the works that I can't talk about right now, but I'm really excited about. And it's just one of the many things that needs to shift for the good of our communities across the country.
It hits me a lot what you're saying, because again, both of us were artists, like working, and 2020 just changed the game. I was episode 8, the controversial episode. We did it live in Boxers, Washington Heights, and today all I can say is rest in peace to Boxers in Washington Heights, and that was a major shock. This is a very real issue, and I'm very happy that you put on a different hat as well, because just listening to you and just watching your work, I had the joy of just watching you go through everything you're going through. It's been an incredible journey. So now that I have you, I just want to ask this question before we get into it.
Sure.
Right now, October 1st, what is your proudest accomplishment of 2020?
Not ending up in jail. My second proudest accomplishment after not ending up in jail is unapologetically fighting for what I believe in and drawing boundaries while I do so. It's hard to be an artist right now. It's really hard to be an artist. I know I'm not alone when I say that. I feel like I am missing a part of myself because I cannot be on stage. We love a Zoom reading, but the shit doesn't cut it. And it's just not the same. And what has happened over the last couple of months is that I now work in politics, at the very least politically adjacent, the things that I've been able to immerse myself in. But if I'm actually being honest, I think the thing that I'm proudest of right now is my seeming ability to help people step into their power and take back their agency when it comes to speaking with their whole complete voice, whether they're calling senators, whether they're standing up for themselves in a racist situation with a friend or a family member, whether they are simply claiming their own agency as the human that they are. it's incredible to see a community that for so long has been powerless stand up and go, wait a minute. Not only am I not powerless, I am so incredibly powerful, and I am no longer waiting for permission for somebody to say, oh, you can be powerful today. You can claim your agency today. You can claim your identity today. Nobody's waiting for that anymore. And I'm so proud to be part of a community that is doing that, both artistically, in hospitality, on the political side, like all of it. It is just, it gives me so much hope and joy.
How did you come across the Rock the Audition book?
So I have known Sheri for a couple years. She and I worked together on as performers together on a couple projects over the last couple years. I had a coaching with her, this past February. I've never read the book. When we had our coaching, she was very, very adamant that I buy it. And usually when I get a hard sales pitch, I pivot in the other direction. I've worked in sales, so that shit doesn't work on me. And I know a hard tactic when I see it. The book, honestly, the first chunk I have read of it was these pages that were sent to me just last Thursday. And I've heard things about it over the last couple of years that did not increase my desire to read it. So last Thursday was my official first encounter with actually reading some of the text.
I guess I don't know any other way to say this. And you working with her and reading those books and knowing the brand, is Sheri Sanders a gatekeeper?
Yes, 100%.
All right.
I also want to clarify that being a gatekeeper is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
But what you do with your gatekeeper power, privilege, status, what you do with it, whether you use it to be of service or whether you use it to be in power, those are very, very different things.
Yeah.
So that's my caveat. But yes, she's absolutely a gatekeeper.
All right, great. I'm happy we could agree on that, because I was about to be like, I wonder, when I first moved to New York, there's two people when it comes to teaching that I heard about. Now in LA, it's like, hey, I saw your commercial and stuff. Like, the names are very funny over in LA. But in New York, it is Jen Waldman Studios. It is Sheri Sanders. Man, they are business women. Like, doing it. So it was very interesting to see and like observe how both of these groups work and stuff like that. As someone who started in like teaching artist education, like it's just very good to see where it can go.
Yes.
And the growth that it can be, and also the service aspect, and seeing, oh, this person came out of there, or this person was working really hard. They got an endorsement from that gatekeeper and they moved up. It's very interesting seeing how it works here in New York. So for me, a matter of fact, let's just do this. Can we play Never Welcomed?
A few places. But Black people and people of color have never been welcome in the education system. I said it. Never, ever, ever. And so to me, it's like, you can't even, if you bring Black students in or you bring in students of color, they still are seeing white people are still running the show. And so it's been really, really hard, because now all of a sudden.
So when she says that, what hits me the most when it hit me in that interview, what I wondered a lot was, if we know Sheri's a gatekeeper, and we know that there is a list of, there are people who are BIPOC who have benefited from going through her. What happens if we remove her as a gatekeeper?
I mean, I'm not a spoke in the wheel of the theatrical, educational, industrial complex, but my assumption would be that that is an open door for, God, I don't know, a BIPOC gatekeeper, maybe? I mean, let's get crazy. She's absolutely right when she says that people of color are not welcome in educational spaces. And that's both at the faculty level, at the administrative level, and at the student level. We all know as people of color what it's like to be othered, to be tokenized, to be objectified, to be exoticized in an educational setting. We all know that, whether it's a one-off class with a casting director or if it's your BFA, right? We all understand what that feels like in our bodies. We understand what that feels like in our hearts as we're trying to do our work and process what we might be experiencing and make the best of a potentially painful situation. So she's absolutely right. And I think when you remove the white gatekeepers, you make more room for other people to join the table. It's not enough to go, well, we're going to take this one white gatekeeper and then replace her with a very woke white gatekeeper. I'm sorry, you're missing the point. Yeah. You're missing the point because, you know, I'm not a product of a BFA program. And I just keep getting more and more grateful for that as time goes on. But I understand what it's like to have people teaching me who don't look like me, and the gap in empathy there. And education needs to be much more empathetic than it is now, because these conservatory programs and BFA programs are churning out people who have no sense of self, and especially these young minds of color who are so gifted and so earnest and so passionate about following their dreams, just like all their white counterparts. Yeah. But are starting 10 feet behind the finish line. And it's because of white gatekeepers. It's because of that.
What does atonement look like for you?
I think it depends on the situation. And one thing that bothers me, and this is why I said I despise cancel culture. I despise it, but I love accountability culture. Atonement is not a one size fits all thing. Just like we talk about race, we need to get away from talking about race on the binary, because it's not just black or white. We have black at one end of the spectrum, very white at the other end of the spectrum. The action and the grieving and the understanding and the empathy gets built everywhere in between. And it's the same thing with atonement. And I think it really, really comes down to the person who did the harm, because you have people where you can be in a room with them and they can harm you and you can go, ooh, ouch, that hurt me. And they go, oh my God. Okay, pause everything. Tell me. I'm so sorry. And there is educational capacity there. There is potential to build empathy bridges there. There is potential for someone to gain an understanding of the harm that they have caused in that moment. And then there is the other side of the coin, which is people who cannot be educated, people who cannot be taught, people who are so desperate to hang on to their power, to hang on to their agency, to maintain the quality of their optics, that they lean into words, they lean into marketing language, they lean into grandiose public statements, to prop themselves up to continue doing what they are doing. And that is the insidious side of it. And that is the part that does the most harm, because it is that type of woke white person that will continue to stay within the system, collect people of color around them, and propagate the very issues they say they fight against. So for me, it's optics versus ethos. Atonement entirely depends on whether we're coming from your ethos or from your optics. If we're coming from your optics, I don't give a fuck about anything else about you. I don't need to know, because I know everything.
So for anyone wondering, why is Joanna Carpenter here? I would like to submit the first 23 minutes of the show. Joanna, I would love to keep you in and go with this experiment that has been in my head since the creation of this show. Would you be open to joining me to talk and go further with Sheri Sanders?
100%. 100%.
Awesome. Yes. So hang on out in the backstage. It's been great. Baggy. I would like to introduce everyone to Sheri Sanders. How you doing?
Hi.
Oh wait, am I allowed to do that? Are we under contract? Did the distribution deal go through? Do I have to pay for that? I would like to take that back. Sheri, how are you?
I'm good. I'm really happy to be here. Really happy.
I say let's just dive straight into it. Are you okay with that?
Yep, I'm ready.
All right. What inspired the first edition of Rock the Audition, the book?
The very first edition in 2011 really had to do with the fact that, it kind of started with me having problems as a performer in the industry. I was having emotional problems and I couldn't come through. And coincidentally, Amy Rogers from Pace University was the one who suggested I become a rock teacher. And I didn't want to teach at all because I was in my ego and I wanted to be an important person. And she said, no, you have to teach. You have a gift and you will not be in whatever your emotional problems are. When you focus out and give to other people, you become less obsessed with your ego and more obsessed with healing other people when you focus out on them. So I became a teacher and my whole life started there. And I created the book because I wanted to be able to reach more people and have more people talking about popular music, because it was what was happening in the industry. And nobody knew how to sing popular music, but I grew up listening to it. So I was kind of in a weird place between being a musical theater performer, but also being a pop singer. So I just decided to write the book, and it was a first attempt at all of my crazy ideas and my thoughts and feelings and my relationships with music and emotions. And it was sort of a first try at introducing myself to the industry as an innovator and saying, what is pop music? What is pop culture? What do you want from people? And so that was the 2011 one, and that was published by Hal Leonard. So I started writing that in 2010.
Yeah. My question is, was this written with the objective of it being circulated within the school system?
You know, I don't know. I think it was just a first attempt at putting all my ideas onto paper so that I didn't have to run around trying to sort of introduce it to everybody. So I think it ended up in the school system because the colleges ended up like hearing who I was and hearing what I was trying to do and hearing that I was trying to help innovate sort of what I would call a tricky spot in the industry. I was trying to solve a problem. So it became a way to solve a problem, which is to introduce people to what it's like to listen to popular music, understand where the music came from, and then share what that music does to you rather than playing a role. So I created it as a way to put my emotions and my feelings about what I think popular music and musical theater are, along with interviews with the industry. And we just kind of put them together and sort of put it out in the world to see what happened.
All right. You brought up the name, so I'm going to do a little quiz. I think it's always great to put a face to the name. So who this?
Hal Leonard? Yes, that's Amy Rogers. That's my ex-girlfriend. We were together for 4 years. And yes, thank you. Amy was my girlfriend at the very, very beginning of my career as a teacher. She was the person who told me so. And I was with her for 4 years, and I had a great deal of conflict with how she thinks about people. And that was the first time that I think I started noticing in education that there was a race issue because of Amy.
Can you explain that? Because again, she gave you the start. She encouraged you to write. I know that Pace University is kind of on fire right now because of she started that musical theater program.
Yes.
Can you talk more on that?
Fire too. Yeah, sure. So I was with her in the very, very beginning, and she always knew that I cared about people of color, that I just had an interest in them and a curiosity about them, and she always found it very sweet and very precious. And then when she started to bring people of color into school, I felt as though they were that she was tokenizing them. I never felt that she was seeing them as people, but I felt that she was seeing them as an asset to her program. And we had conversations about that. And then I also started dating a senior who is Black, Talia Ray Groves, and she wouldn't let me teach there anymore, even though she let a lot of her other teachers have relationships with students in sneaky ways, but they were all white. So even though Amy and I weren't together anymore, she did have a problem with me falling in love with a brown person in front of her eyes. So, and then I became friends with a lot of the students there, and they could and would come to me and kind of share with me along the way what was happening. And then several years ago, I was called to discuss what I saw and my relationship with her because I knew there was a pending lawsuit. So I was always somebody that people could come to and say, you know her, you know what she's like, you know what she did, can you share? And I've always kind of been willing to be grateful to her for telling me that I should be a pop artist, but I believe that she has a mental illness and took it out on her Black students and her students with neurodiversities, and her students who are not perfect, because she was trying to follow the shame of the industry's lead, which is white and skinny, and various other things are perfect and everything else is scary and harmful. So I just always saw that, and when CR Truths came out, I told everybody that I would stand for them and what I saw and how I felt she treated them.
You endorse the CR Truths movement. Can we get you?
Yes. I told them that I am behind every single thing that they say. Yeah.
All right. Can we play Amy Rogers?
Walking around with. So I became a teacher. And similarly, I think she had trauma that she didn't know how to work with as well. So we were both kind of set up to serve. But I kept working on my mental health issues, and I'm not sure she did. So here we are today, and what's happening in education.
All right. What does that work look like? If you're doing it, and Amy is, what does that work look like as you go through it?
You mean working with students of color?
No, just what you talked about in that video, just working on mental health stability.
Yeah. So I have PTSD, I have complex PTSD, which means that I have trauma, and I work with trauma. And Amy also, I believe, works with trauma, but the difference between the two of us is that I'm in a relationship with it. So when I am traumatized, I look at it and I process it and I try to figure out whether it's the trauma of the moment or my past trauma, and try to sort of figure out who's stirring it and how I need to handle it so I could properly address people based upon whether they're actually traumatizing me or not, and what to do with that. And I believe that she had never worked on her trauma, and I believe she took her trauma out on other people. And I believe I work on my trauma, and I may still do those things, but I'm in a relationship enough with my trauma to bring that into the work that I do. So if I do harm or I end up traumatizing another person, I can go back and look at it and find out what it is and make changes. And I think that she just ran away from them personally.
Then, we have our first question that I want to pull from the audience. I believe it's in direct relation to something that you just said. Can we get that up on the screen?
Sure.
I believe it's the nobody knew how to sing popular music. Oh, okay, sorry. I see where it is. Okay, great. So there's two things. You can leave a comment on the Facebook page, the YouTube page, and then you can also send direct messages if you have that line. There's so many ways to get in here. Someone wants a point of clarification.
Yeah.
Nobody knew how to sing popular music. Does she mean white people?
No, I meant in traditional musical theater, we are trained to sing traditional musical theater. We've been told that popular music was not valuable for the stage. And so we were trained in this moneyed, white, legitimate, traditional, aesthetic. And then when Rent happened, they kept asking everybody to sing popular music, and everybody was like, we only know Guys and Dolls and traditional musical theater. So when I say nobody knew how to sing pop music, it was sort of in terms of musical theater. No one was being trained in pop music stylings for the purpose of auditioning for musical theater. I can totally understand why that says nobody. So if that's a correction of language, I hear it.
Let's get deeper into it. Could I get popular music? Can I get that?
Environments and change it from where I'm at, which is that like, well, you have to let me do it because you need popular music. And I've been using it in the guise of popular music because everybody needs it for their careers. But popular music was entirely created by Black people and some immigrants, and so we can't go any further without kind of finding out historically what's gone on. So if you want to succeed in the industry, I'll come and help you book the jobs, but it is not without understanding that every single style of music that we love fundamentally came from Black people, and how that all relates to how you need to be an advocate and an ally when you sing it. So I snuck in through the back door and now I've infiltrated 86 programs. Good news. Good news is that I do believe that from the stuff that's happened at PACE with Amy, and from the stuff that's happening with the Black Lives Matter movement, there is a world where teachers at colleges are going, we get it. We are feeding into and we are telling our students something that is very, very incorrect. And we didn't know it was incorrect. We were just doing what the industry told us that they wanted. And so there's been a big wake-up call in education. I'm very happy to say there will be some healing that's going to go on for the students that are there now, and for the students who went to institutions and were told, well, you're a baritone and you're Black, so these are the only roles you're going to play. And if you don't behave yourself in a certain way, you're not going to work. And those things were what the industry was saying. And now the industry can no longer go back to that, and therefore colleges and hopefully eventually teen programs can start setting you up as allies and advocates, as performers, and then also set up the industry for what it really needs to look like, which is that so many roles that were created originally were based on stories of people who were of color, and the white people ended up playing those roles. So I think in a
The white people did you just do a scene change?
Someone decided to mow their lawn. I'm like, this is not the time.
That's such
to organize
that,
a house. Yeah,
that's such a Davon stunt. That's such this is what this looks like. I'm always the one doing it, but this is what great.
No, don't mow your lawn right now, please.
In response to the video we just saw, the last little bit is what gets me. It's the I love what you're saying, but then of course flipping that back. Whenever I throw an idea out there, I always flip it back on myself to see if it rings true. I want to try this with you. You, without a shadow of a doubt, if anyone looks at your resume and what you've done, you are self-made. You have built this brand. You have done Rock the Audition. The brand you are selling is also an amplification of Black people, Black culture, basically what you said in that video. So when we talk about this intersection, and we talk about where you stand right now and the role that you have, looking at the role itself, Sheri, who does that role belong to?
A person of color.
What does that mean?
I've been able to be this person up until this point, introducing Black culture, immigrant culture, neurodiversity, mental health. Like, I have a big platform. I introduce a lot of things. But I think that it was okay for a while because white people couldn't handle people of color talking about their experience. But because I was the white woman coming in and talking about all popular music, that's how I was able to go to 86 schools, is because I was white. And people were able to go, well, I can handle her, I can digest her, and she's opening up conversations that are difficult and addressing things that are difficult, and we could handle it because she's white. And the thing is that it was fine up until this point. But now it has to be handed over to people of color. I can't be the white woman speaking on behalf of my friends of color anymore. I did that for long enough to get the conversations going, to get people moving. I think that a lot of people of color, or actually people with various different situations that have made their lives difficult, have been able to come to me and say, can you talk to my white teacher? They're harming me. Can you talk to this teacher? And I could, because I was white. And I'm also, a Jew that was made into soap. My ancestors were made into soap, and I have trauma in my body. And so to me, I was able to say, look, I'm traumatized. We're all traumatized. None of us are coming out. None of us have room in this industry. So let me just use pop music and figure out how we can heal all of that together. Now, I think I've done a really good job until this point, but I agree with you. Based upon the work that I am doing and continue to do, I think it's really, really important to hand over the conversations about race and about what it's been, and the education needs to come from people of color. I've been great up until now, but I am a gatekeeper. I am a part of white supremacists, and I don't think it's healthy to have a white woman it's not healthy to have a white woman try to heal race anymore. By herself, when all of these artists of color can come in and take their place in education where they belong. So if you're asking me if I think I should be doing it anymore, I think I should be facilitating teachers of color to do what they do, and that they're the ones who should be kind of taking the lead.
What does that shift look like?
It's already started, actually, in a couple of different places, I think. Do you mean in the industry proper, or just with Rock the Audition and me?
With you, Rock the Audition and the brand. Well,
let's see. I just got a job. Well, there's two things. We're just talking about race today, because I do also other stuff with gender and neurodivergence. But so just to focus on this, I got a job on Broadway On Demand, and they hired me because they like Rock the Audition, but they also care that I want to introduce what the palette needs to look like. And so one of the things is I brought on a handful of teachers to start doing the educational programs that I've been doing on my own, but actually really do it. So I have Ron Veo Daniel and Melissa Foster, who are creating a rapping for musical theater curriculum. Vishal Vaidya, who's Indian, is creating a rapping curriculum, but that rapping curriculum has the entire history of the Black community and sort of where we meet each other spiritually, so that the music is connected emotionally and spiritually and not like a party trick. That riffing is not a disconnected from race party trick. Elijah Caldwell, who's one of my associates, is creating 3 classes. One is and this is actually something that I told him a couple of months ago, but when I got into Broadway On Demand, I realized that of all the teachers I've taught, I've only taught 2 Black teachers. Because there aren't any Black teachers or teachers of color in the industry, not in music, not in the Musical Theater Educators Alliance, which I work with, but there just aren't any. And that's why I said that before about how they're not welcome. So Elijah is going to train 10 teachers of color on me, on the house, so we can start putting them out into the world to teach my technique.
Elijah Caldwell?
Elijah Caldwell, yeah. He's also doing a class called, there's a couple of classes that he's going to be teaching for me online. But he has a class that is for people of color only, to visit these roles and revisit these roles that were taken away from people of color. And he's going to work with them in a BIPOC space only. And then he wants to bring everybody else in to kind of witness what was taken from people so that we could process. So they have a private space, and then we can go, what did we do to you? I would say that I'm in the process of handing it over to all of the correct people who need to be speaking all of these things. And then what I'd like to do is just look at the bigger picture and how that infiltrates itself into the other musical theater programs. How do we get people to learn from who the resources really are? And how can we...
While you answer this question, Sheri, can we pull up Christina Ann? Because I believe we're actually answering Christina Ann's question.
Oh, are we?
Yeah, so essentially she's asking, as a white woman, can you explain how you are the right choice to educate BIPOC individuals on your own history? So you're getting into that. Can you keep going?
Yeah, no, I'm not. I was the right person as a historian talking about popular music and going, you cannot be a white person and learn how to riff from Sarah Bareilles and then sing a Beyonce song, never having known that Beyonce is pop and her musical mother is disco and her grandmother is Motown and her aunts and uncles are jazz, blues, and gospel. I will know if you do not do that work, and I will see you, and I will not want you around me. And so I think the whole idea is that I was okay to introduce that because I was introducing the whole palette of popular music. I was just introducing it as a new idea. And then when the 2011 book came along, there were things that I had to talk about that were none of my business. So I just brought my friends of color to speak about those things, because I can't talk about riffing. I can't talk about anything I can't talk about what it's like to be a person of color, but I could bring a person of color and say, can you share what this experience is? Or can you describe this for me so that they know?
Can we try
from
that?
The source. Yeah.
Okay, let's try that. I would like to bring in 2 members of my Council of Black Excellence. I would like to start with actor Jaquan Jackson, who will be playing the role of young college student. Can we bring in Jaquan Jackson? Hey, Jaquan, how are you?
What's up? How you doing?
Good. Jaquan is in No More Goodbyes, which will be coming to movie theaters, when we can get back into movie theaters. So probably around May 2021. And then I also want to bring in Franklin Tennyson.
Okay.
Franklin, educator for over 10 years. He did Teach for America. He is a school leader and corporate exec for companies of American schools. That's when he was in China. In Harvard, he had a master's. This is Harvard. Got a master's in education policy and management. Let's pause and really break down those credentials, Franklin. Or Trey. Trey, look at him. He's like, no, I'm the cool dad. Go.
Break them down how? Like when I was at school, I also had a chance to teach 2 classes. The first one on negotiation, and then the other one was a class on power, pedagogy, and identity, where we explored a lot of these topics, especially as it relates to race, America, gender, just all types of different areas, and how power is very much sort of implicated in the way that we interact with each other, and how our patterns and how our language really embed the structures that we have in our own mind as it relates to the world, how we see ourselves in the kind of framework of power.
And now, is that a dorm room or is that a apartment near the University of Virginia? What's going on there?
This is my apartment right now, and I have a lighting situation because I feel like I'm like washed out right here. This is my apartment with my bare walls.
All right, I'm gonna ask Napoleon or anyone if they can put the 2 pages in question into the Facebook chat and the chat in the YouTube chat, just so anyone that wants to look at it can follow along. This is how we're gonna do it. Sheri, if you would do us the honor of just listening. Jaquan, if you can get ready to read. Once that is done, Trey, I am going to ask you to break down what you're experiencing, or what a lot of us, or what the role Jaquan is playing would experience in that moment. Jaquan, whenever you're ready.
Living and enjoying what the song does to you as if you were alive in 1959. So now, check in with yourself. Do you understand the style in which the song needs to be sung? Do you know how the dance moves of the performers of the era fill in your body? Now do the deep work. Imagine your lifestyle if you're in the Motown era. What records do you listen to? What are your parents like? Are you in your bedroom listening to a record? On the dance floor with other people? Let's get back to integrating when you audition. Who are on the dance floor with, and are they white or are they brown? How does that inform the way you sing and dance? I know conceptually understanding integration, implementing it depends on how you are and how you use your imagination. You're right. Can you imagine singing your song about a person of color that you aren't even supposed to be talking to because you are told by society that you were subhuman? You can't help loving them. The rhythm that you put in your, the soul that you put in your voice, the way that you open, the way that that opens you up as a person. If you're Black, you get to share.
Oh wait, time's out.
To you.
Is anyone else hearing clipping or a little bit of choppiness?
Yeah.
Oh Lord. Jaquan, is everything okay over there for you? Internet wise?
Yeah, I can. Yeah. Well, it's a little choppy when you're speaking back to me, but it doesn't sound choppy, I guess, as I'm reading it.
Let's see. Could this be a headset issue, or you know what? We're getting beyond the point. Just go a little bit slower, and let's see if we can fight against this internet.
Okay. Yeah. Perfect. If you are Black, you get to share what your music does to you. Remember in Hairspray, when Black people could only have their music on the radio once a month. Now, through your performance, you get the chance to imagine that this is your rare opportunity to perform and open people's heart and minds. You get to expand the opportunity from your day to month to year to always. Yeah. You have a chance to say, you get to love me too, not just my music. How would that affect you? Would you think it would do you to risk sharing what your music lives like in you? Sorry. If you are from any culture background other than Oxland, African American, thank you for your patience. I'm sorry it's been so black and white. It has taken me so long to include you in this picture. The musical theater industry is finally starting to acknowledge that you were indeed alive during this time. You help the creative team by putting your own unique Latin, Indian, or Asian seasoning, if you will, and I absolutely will, to your expression of what the music does to you. If you are a person of mixed race, try a version of representing culture background of one parent and one version as representing the other. What a delicious dish to serve. Create a character from your audition based on yourself and your knowledge of this era. Then choices based on who you would be if you had been there. Remember this term, research, soul search. Research the era to be a real person by soul searching and sharing with us what your song does to your body, your voice, and feeling. Remember to let the music move you and dance and sing. Is that innocent?
All right, we'll let that go. Jaquan, we are going to lift our hands in prayer for your internet, but the reading was great. That is Jaquan Jackson of No More Goodbyes. I like to bank that he's a star of tomorrow. You know, when you have a Council of Black Excellence, you need people that you know are going to grow, and you need the established, got to bridge them. Thank you, Jaquan.
Thank you. Sorry for
Thank
that.
you. Thank you.
Trey, talk to us about what you see.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a number of things. I think the first thing that really struck me, of course, was the term seasoning. And I know that this is probably something that has been on other people's minds too. But when I hear the word, seasoning, as being related to different types of cultures, whether you're Black, Latinx, or however else you want to describe that, what I hear that in that is like a minimization of an entire history, into embellishment, into garbage, into seasoning. And when I hear that, I have to ask myself, well, if we're the seasoning, what is the base? And I have to imagine that the base here is whiteness.
White.
And I think that is, for me, and I imagine a student reading that, right? Like I'm seeing further reinforcement of this sense that I've always had, and this kind of idea that I am, validating what has been in the past rather than giving you kind of an exposure to what can be, like in the future, as a student. Additionally, when it comes to just looking at students in general, is that education inherently runs the risk of dehumanizing the student. And I think that especially is true for students who may not share the majority. In America, of course, that's whiteness. And so I think looking at how we have here in this book, for example, we have an inherent power dynamic between the teacher who has authored the book, which is Sheri, and then of course, the student who is reading this, and already there is this idea that, okay, the person who has written this book has something that I need for what success looks like in my life. And so already like that for me is a problem, but the message I'm getting here too is that the way to really succeed, the behaviors that are needed is not just assimilation, like into whiteness. So I think the text itself doesn't necessarily advocate for assimilation, but it does seem to push the idea of palatability. Like let's make your Blackness, let's make your uniqueness palatable for this audience. Like if you are a mixed race, let's now like disjoin who you are as a person, and in this instance perform like this parent's history, this parent's history, and for people who have already experienced so much disunity in their lives and their history, right? Like that can be traumatizing in a way that is also insidious, because they might not really be aware that, hey, me doing this is actually me just in some ways performing the expectation of like this kind of dominant structure that I cannot be my whole self. I must now be something that others can look at and say, oh, I recognize that, or I'm comfortable with that. And so I think like those are some of the things that really stick out to me. And then just in general, right? I think just from a textual standpoint, like this idea of, like my non-Anglo-Saxon, readers, I have not included you up to this point. And one of the things that really came in our class that I taught last year was this sort of implicit understanding that whiteness has the power to include, and even in the way that language is formulated, right? There is this sort of subtle interjection of the author or Sheri's, like power, which is, like in some ways cloaked in your identity, in the whiteness that you occupy. I know you have different, different backgrounds too, just that particular aspect of it. That also, like pings that strikes at something in the reader's mind where it's like, well, now, like, oh, I wasn't thinking about it before, but here you have basically really put a stake in the ground that you are the one who must now include me, must now invite me into this. And then when you do, right, just textually, it's a matter of maybe like, 11 lines in the text, as opposed to what I'm assuming, therefore, like the rest of the book before this point was dedicated to folks that did not share this my identity, that was dedicated to, as you said before, the Anglo-Saxon reader. So therefore, I wonder really where am I being fit into all of that, and like what value am I meant to draw out of that, except for the constant reinforcement that, hey, that included, and you must now depend on me, the author, the teacher, to open the gate and let you in.
Got it.
Is there anything else you would like to add, Trey?
Well, no, I mean, I think I would say this too. I think it came up earlier as well, is that I'm a very big fan and believer of being like, I too do not believe in cancel culture and that whole thing. I think that, people make mistakes, people, cause harm. And, and I think that if they are actually open to it and learning, then like that is great. I think also too, there is, this kind of idea like, okay, well, that's a great first step. And now what is the next thing? Like how you can use that power. And to your point earlier, Sheri, like, who are you going to give it to?
Yeah.
I think that's a very important thing where,
Agreed.
they have equity. If power is a scarce resource, right? Then if someone is holding it, it means someone does not have it. And this person doesn't have it, can never have it unless those that hold it are willing to actually part with some of that in order to make sure that there is equity, not just in name, but in reality.
Agreed.
So thank you for
you.
come in and share my thoughts on this. And
Franklin is a very popular speaker, and he is going to his next panel. So we didn't want to eat up all of his time as he educates the masses. Thank you.
Thank you.
I love my Council of Black Excellence. They're incredible. Go knock them dead, friend. Sheri.
Yeah.
What do you take from that?
Well, it's interesting because, people were talking to me about intent, well, do they know that you're a good person and that what your intent is? And because I have PTSD, I struggle with intent. I think assault is assault. And I think that is what he's saying that people are feeling when they read that they're not thinking, I know that this book is dedicated to opening up the span of consciousness and education where we've been, where people have been faltering around people who've been marginalized. And, I guess my first initial response is I just feel that in a act of absolute unconsciousness that entire passage is an act of assault on the community of color.
All right. I guess we should talk about intent.
That's how I feel about it. Yeah, that's how I feel about it. Was the intent good? Absolutely. But it's an assault. So we can talk about the intent.
No. I don't think either of us could talk about the intent. I think there's someone else who can.
Yeah.
What I noticed when I saw all the Facebook comments going and stuff like that was an odd absence from the people of color on your staff, on your team, on your board. And I thought, wow, that's really interesting. Sheri's really fighting this on her own. Why? So I decided to look through and I decided to reach out to some people. And you brought up someone earlier named Elijah Caldwell.
Yeah, he's my associate. Yeah.
Elijah wanted to be very quiet on this. And the reason he wanted to be quiet is because the idea of it coming from your platform is false, the idea of coming from anywhere. So when I reached out to him, it was almost, he was happy to share it because this was a neutral moment. So in a moment of speaking to your intent, this situation and everything, I would like to share the video reflection from Elijah Caldwell. Can we get that?
Hey y'all, it's Elijah Caldwell, aka This is Caldwell. And I have been asked to be a character witness on behalf of Sheri Sanders. I first met Sheri in 2013 when I was a grad student at NYU. She came and did a masterclass for us on pop music because at the time, literally no one was teaching what to do with that. And I was exiting a program that we didn't really have language for at the time of what we were going through right now, but I had experienced some racism myself in the program. I experienced some, oppression and things that have caused me trauma over the years. And so she was sort of the first person that I got to be my whole queer, black, cis male artist. Again, I repeat, I'm a black, queer, cis male artist. That's what I am, and I always think it's important for me to say that. During her coaching, she just sort of unlocked things that I was trying to find that I was having issues finding in musical theater through pop rock music. So from there, I took her four class series, and a couple of pop-ups, and I truly just found myself as an artist, found myself as a queer artist, as a black artist, as a male, as learning how to forgive, learning how to be gracious, learning about grace, And then from there, I was a performer in her concert that she did about her own PTSD. We coached the song Boogie Wonderland, which there's a funny story behind that. The first time that we coached in her 4-week class, if you catch me over drinks, I will let you know about. But that being said, like, she really was one of the first professors, besides my voice teacher, Matthew Shepard Smith, that saw me as a human and saw me as an artist. She didn't shy away from that. So from there, I, became one of her go-tos. It didn't feel like tokenism. When she first created her series with Rock the Audition, and it went digitally. I was brought in, and when we discussed like the Motown era, we literally discussed one of the moments in Dreamgirls, with Cadillac Car, where you have like white people stealing black music, and I was the example of what it should have sounded like when it came from us, right? So she really addressed that, and she really, from my knowledge back then in 2000, I guess it might have been 2014 at the time, I thought that she was like handling these situations with grace and with care. Cut to over the years, like I had worked with her, I had done many concerts, had sat in on classes, and then last year, a couple years ago, she brought me in, as an accompanist, right? And then as an accompanist, I started coaching. Like I am myself a teaching artist. So I have been teaching at a couple of colleges here in New York. I am an adjunct professor at a college here in New York and a college in Connecticut. I teach musical theater voice. I coach. I have been sort of the Black queer cis male voice that has been missing. And I've been very interested in dismantling white supremacy in musical theater. And then recently, Sheri sort of gave me the platform to really break these things down and dismantle this and recreate a curriculum that that is missing the culture and the application of the history that is mainly white and musical theater that has been coming from the white gaze. So she gave me a platform, and I've been allowed to test this platform out amongst different with different people in the city. I am going to try to focus on Sheri, so that's why I'm truly not trying to name drop. You can Google and you can find these things out, and you can go to my social media and you can find out these other platforms that I've actually been asked to teach on this on. But the idea actually sort of started with myself, and then Sheri gave me like a bigger platform that is upcoming actually. So for me, it never really felt like she was tokenizing. I have to address it. I have seen the pages of the book, and the pages out of context seem crazy. Like that is what it is. I can't. And I also have to say that there are things that me, as my experience as a Black queer cis male, that maybe doesn't affect my trauma, but it will affect other people's trauma. So I also have to acknowledge that. And I'm also in a space, and I will go on record saying, I am also in a space where I cannot and will not believe people of color. Like that is just not the space that we're in. And too many Black and brown bodies are dying in the street for me to be in a space where it's not. So if Sheri needs to be brought to task, we've talked about this, she needs to be brought to task. And the reason why I have not made a statement until now is that we agreed that Sheri shouldn't come out here and parade her Blacks or her browns around being like, that's not something that should be done. And I was advised by a mentor that like, I work for the company, but I'm also not the DEI person for Rock the Audition. I am a Black queer cis male who is a music associate for Rock the Audition and an arranger for Music Notes, and someone who is currently in the business trying to dismantle white supremacy by creating and cultivating curriculums that dismantle white supremacy for Black, Indigenous, and people of color, right? So that is who I am as a person, and I will fully be that person, and I still stand by my working for Rock the Audition. I think it is much needed. Is there an overhaul that needs to be done? Absolutely. I think that's what we are learning, because at the end of the day, Sheri is a white woman, and I think she recognizes that, and I recognize that, and we need to recognize that she is a type of gatekeeper, because like that is just a thing that happens when you begin these kind of journeys, right? And when you're leading these kind of journeys, when you're the only person who does these kind of journeys, right? That is the definition of a gatekeeper. So I think acknowledging all of this is how we now can move forward, and how now clearly change needs to happen, and people have to address trauma. And, you know, we've discussed that, like, sometimes, yeah, you need to sit back and listen and not say, look at what I'm doing, look at what I've been doing, but like sit back and really listen. And that's where we're at. But in terms of Sheri and addressing being a character witness for who she is, no harm has been done to me, and I have been given a platform myself, a larger platform, to really focus on changing and dismantling white supremacy as a person of color.
All right. You gotta love when you do things live, man.
I know.
It's not syncing, but the words are there, and that's what I want to ask about. How do those words hit your heart?
Which part? Because they all do it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think knowing that I could hand it over to Elijah to start the process feels correct. Because I can't talk about it anymore. I feel like I built the foundation of the house, and now the people who need to occupy it need to build the house from here. They need to fill the house and fill the rooms and make them the way it belongs. So, you know, in my advocacy, it was really never to be the white woman who told everybody what to do. It was to try to make the environment better for all people involved. And so now I feel like exactly what we're saying. I'm glad I opened the door, but it would be a privilege to step back and let the people who created all of this wonderful music and art take over and let them recreate the industry in the way it belongs. So I feel confident putting it in his hands and the other hands of the hands of the other artists of color that I'm putting on Broadway On Demand.
Can we bring Joanna Carpenter in? All right, Joanna, once again, let me reintroduce you to Sheri. Sheri, let me reintroduce you to Joanna.
Joanna, thanks for being here with me.
Thank you.
Now on to the experiment.
Yeah.
I would like to bring both of you in, and I want to talk about exactly what change looks like, what progression looks like. We've been touching on it on both sides, but now I just want to see what happens when we really get this bad boy going. While we do that, feel free to bring the comments up. I believe Victor had a very good comment that I would love to highlight. There was someone else there, I forget. Y'all can figure that out as we go. But before we get into that, let's get this bad boy going by pulling from this interview again. I've studied this interview. Can I get reparations?
I'm so lucky, you know, but it's disgraceful. It's disgraceful. And so to me, the reparations are in the white people stepping back and sitting back and going, step forward. We're going to give you back everything we kept from you. And that's going to look like a lot of things. And we have to sit here and listen to what those things are and do them with you. And that's repair. And that has to happen in the union. That has to happen. Really, it has to happen in every single facet of our education and performance process. It has to change in the audition process. It has to change in the rehearsal room. It has to change in company management and stage management. It has to happen in the education in, you know, your choir programs and your high school programs. I mean, it has to start at the very, very bottom, and it has to go from the top, and we have to meet in the middle. But the fact that
Joanna, what does reparations in this situation look like to you?
Oh, that's such an interesting question. I think before I even talk about what reparations could look like in an ideal world, we need to talk about acknowledgement or the lack of it. This conversation started on social media by me, and it has obviously expanded and blown up and placed all of us where we are right now. Perhaps I have missed it, but in this entire segment that I've been listening to, that I've been privy to, in the scanning that I've done of the comments on social media, I have not seen you, Sheri, step back and say, I hurt someone. I acknowledge that I hurt someone. And I acknowledge that while I may not understand that, it is now my job to take that acknowledgement take responsibility and dig in. Maybe I miss this. I try not to be glued to social media at all times because it drains me. But, just for your reference, the person in question who first brought these pages to me is very young. She just came out as queer. She is Latinx. She is the only person of color in her class. And it is required reading to read Rock the Audition. And this woman was brave enough to come to a private group and share, this thing caused me pain and I have no idea what to do about it. She still has not been acknowledged. You don't need to know her name. You don't need to know where she's from. There has been no acknowledgement. So I just want to put that out there. When it comes to reparations, I think there is a buffet of options.
Yeah.
We sit here and we talk a lot about passing the mic, passing the buck, passing on power, all of those things. It all comes back to white people still being in control of the narrative, both from the bottom up and the top down. I'm giving this to you. I'm handing this to you. I'm creating this for you. And I just really am so curious to know what it would look like if we didn't wait for white people to hand us things. And I know that we're all part of an educational system and we're all part of an industrial system, especially in the entertainment industry, where the purse strings and the narratives are controlled by white people at the top. I get that. Like we all thoroughly understand that. But for me, reparations looks like a BIPOC person standing in their power and leading and creating and inspiring and galvanizing and changing the game without being given that opportunity by a white person. And maybe this is me just, irrationally spitballing, but I'm just really sick and tired of waiting for people to tell me that I'm Asian enough to pass the mic to. I'm really sick and tired of waiting for white people to go, oh, this person is of color enough that I want to hand them power because they can do stuff with it, which leads into my third. We need to talk about the onus of labor. If we do not talk about the onus of labor, we are not talking about the heart of the issue, which is that Davon and I are doing labor right now. We are doing hefty emotional labor. There is not a single moment that passes in the day, every 24/7 in the life of a BIPOC person that there is not labor attached to it, whether it's labor in educating our white friends and family members and communities and collaborators and teachers, whether it's doing the extra work like this, whether it's chartering what casting policies can look like, whether it's forming our own theater companies, writing our own music, it's all labor. And when you talk about passing power to someone, I'm curious as to what your thoughts are when it comes down to, are you passing them power or are you passing them more labor? Because I think there's intersectionality there.
I really appreciate that question. I have to think about that because it depends. If I'm a facilitator, do I pass them more labor or do I pay people to help them facilitate what they need so that they get their job done rather than making them have to do all the work for me? You know what I'm saying? When people become a member of my team, they get supported. So I would love for you to clarify labor a little bit more just so I know. Because my whole goal is to be there to create space for them and make sure that it happens as they feel it should. But tell me what you mean by, if you could explain just a little bit deeper, because it's not just for me, it's for all the white women and people that need to hear what that actually means. Can you spend some time on what labor means and the difference between what you were talking about, giving people a platform or making them work for you for your, I guess the word would use for your, to make your platform look diverse. You're
Absolutely.
saying that those are the two opposing ways of existing in this world. And did I answer that correctly? Can you elaborate?
Let me dig in. When I talk about labor, I'm talking about the deep emotional and spiritual labor it takes to be a creative of color, any person of color, but especially creatives of color, because we are by nature highly empathetic. You made a comment early on that I want to circle back to the fact that we carry trauma in our bodies. Resma Menachem does all of his work is centered around the trauma that is carried through bodies, and particularly people of color, throughout generations. And I think it's really, really important to note that there will never be a person who is more spiritually traumatized than a Black person in America, because, you know, if you haven't been living under a rock, you know, for the last however long, we understand why. So when I'm talking about labor, I'm talking specifically about what it takes to show up as a person of color, not only to do your logistical job and put on your game face and do the thing and be efficient and be impactful and have a, you know, be participatory in your community and in the conversation, but what does it cost you as a person of color to then be handed a platform to go make this great because you're a person of color? Because then you have the weight of the community on your shoulders, because now we're getting into monolith territory. Now we're into the territory of, you know, Elijah, and I'm not saying that he feels like this. I'm definitely not going to speak for him. And I very much respect and appreciate his work, you know, but if Elijah is working by himself to dismantle white supremacy within this organization, what does that cost him emotionally? It costs us all something. So when I'm talking about labor, I'm not talking about the physical labor. Like, every single artist, you know, is a hustler. Like, we do the thing, we take care of business. But the emotional and spiritual cost for a person of color to take something and make it better, or to build something from scratch, or to expound upon something that is, you know, a conversation or a topic or a platform or an educational point or a piece of material or property that is handed to them, that the cost is exponentially higher because the stakes are higher for us. So when I'm talking about labor, that's what I'm talking about. And it's not up to you to decide how much it costs a person of color. It's up to the person of color who is receiving the microphone or whatever it might be to think for themselves, not even to tell you, but to think for themselves, what is this costing me and is it worth it? Sometimes the ROI is very much worth it. Other times it's not. And those are individual decisions, you know, which is, again, we don't want to get into monolithic territory.
Right.
I would like to cut in really quick, because it's not every day that we get to talk directly to the person that says, you hurt me. This hurts me. I have a feeling for this. This is something. And I think when you get a gift, you gotta embrace the gift. And all of this is great, but this is not the gift. Can we put up RTO1 again, please? When I first saw this picture, it wasn't the book that got me. It was the hand. It was the hand. That is a BIPOC hand. That is a hand embracing, looking that in, and the idea that it was screenshot and it was shared to Joanna. It shows. There's just so much there, and I don't want to speak to it because in this situation we could take that down. I would like to introduce the young woman who started all this. I would like to bring out Rachel Ramirez.
Oh my goodness.
Hey, Rachel, how are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm good. I'm just really happy. Oh my God, I get so emotional.
I'm very happy.
Rachel, oh my God. Rachel, here we go. Staying on task. Walk us through what was happening at your school, what was happening when you got Rock the Audition into your hands, and what caused you to share this with Joanna.
Yeah. First of all, I want to say thank you for this opportunity. It's, as you said, it's not every day that we as BIPOC artists and humans get to face our oppressors. It's not every day that I have the power to say, look at me, you hurt me, and this is why. And I had a lot of apprehension and a lot of fear and a lot of anxiety about whether or not I was going to come on and do this, because I am a queer, Mexican, Jewish, 20-year-old aspiring theater artist. And I'm young. And speaking my truth and standing in my identity is something very new to me and something very terrifying for me. So I just wanted to preface for that. I also want to preface that because of all of those factors, I feel a responsibility to show up now in this space for every student of color, past, present, and future, that has been harmed by institutionalized performance education, because it's not new, because I'm not the first, I'm not going to be the last, and because I have been given an opportunity that a lot of those people haven't. And as Joanna was saying, that's labor.
Yeah.
So yes, your question was to walk you through what happened.
Walk us through what it felt like. Walk us through what it felt like to read it.
Yeah. So I am in my pop rock unit of Audition Rep. I'm a junior in college, and before the semester started, I was already very weary about whether or not I was going to continue pursuing theater and continue on in my BFA musical theater education because of theatrical and institutional failure, because of everything that we've seen this summer. I feel that my institution in particular and theater has always viewed me as inferior. And when I read that you called my identity seasoning, I felt absolutely degraded. And after I read your pages, I had to then face a room full of my white cis male educator and my predominantly white peers, and I had to look at them and ask myself if I was crazy. Ask myself, am I just insane? How come I'm the only one seeing a problem with my identity being called seasoning? And then I'm thinking about everyone else who has held this book, everyone else who has read these words and didn't find it problematic, didn't find it hurtful, didn't find it absolutely belittling. Because I am a person whose identity is not seasoning, a person whose identity I can't take off. I always show up brown in a space. I always audition as a brown queer woman. That doesn't go away for me. That's not something I can add or subtract, and that's not something I can neatly fold down the middle for an acting exercise, because my trauma should never be hoarded out for an acting exercise for white creative teams. And the language in this book made me feel like that was a privilege to get to be seasoning. And as I believe it was Franklin who said earlier, the idea that you, a white woman, give me permission not only to be in the audition room, but to exist. There's an excerpt of that in your pages that says, oh, theater is just now beginning to acknowledge that you were alive in this time. And that's so incredibly harmful, because brown and black people have been in America far longer than white people have been in America. I am Mexican. A lot of this land was mine before it was anyone else's. My ancestors' blood, sweat, and tears and beauty and joy is in that land that isn't yours to claim and isn't yours to give me permission to exist in. So yeah, my institution and my teacher and my reality is that I don't feel safe in theater, and I don't feel safe in my theatrical education. And we were talking about emotional labor. And when I brought this to my institution, I was told to show them the racism. I was asked to point it out. And those are white people in charge of my grades, in charge of my success in the industry, asking me, a 20-year-old, paying to attend this institution, to do that labor for them. To write some sort of, as if I have to prove that I have been hurt, as if I have to prove why and how it's wrong, instead of it just being wrong. Because that's another layer of being invalidated, not only in my identity, not only in my experience, but in my pain. And it's a whole lot of pressure. to say, okay, wait, now I have to sound intelligent. I have to sound put together. I can't be emotional. I can't be raw. I cannot be in any way a furthering of the stereotype of that loud, spicy Latina, because that's what's on the line. My community's on the line. My future is on the line. My truth, my success, and my dream. We as BIPOC artists do not get the same opportunities, and we do not get the same dream that white artists do. And the language in this book perpetuates white superiority. It perpetuates whiteness as the standard. And it perpetuates the idea that BIPOC humans only exist to serve someone else who's usually white. That we don't have autonomy, that we are not regarded as beautiful and worthy and equal, but that there's a different set of rules for us, that there's a different set of expectations for us. That, you know, I don't get to just, as Joanna said earlier, I don't get to just show up and have the normal jitters about whether or not my cut looks right, whether or not my book is prepared, whether or not I look okay, whether or not my eyeliner is smudged. I have to worry about this responsibility that you name in your book to be seasoning.
Yeah.
Rachel, with Sheri here, with Joanna here, with me here, with people watching, looking at Sheri across from you on the screen, of course we can't be here in person, what are your requests? What would you like? And I don't care how it sounds, I don't care how it comes out, nothing is invalid.
Yeah, neither do I.
Honestly, I am so new to naming my harm and naming my identity that I have no clue what I need, especially from you. I have no idea what justice looks like because we've never been given it. And we've never been given this platform. I think that for me, it can start with institutions paying people to sift through what they're teaching to quote unquote find the racism I was plagued to find. I think it starts with people like you. You said earlier that you teach at 86 schools. And I want you to think about that and think about your impact and think about the fact that, again, I'm not the first, not the last, not the only, and that you're teaching white superiority at least 86 institutions, and that your book doesn't only land in BIPOC hands, but it lands in other people who continue to perpetuate that superiority, that racism. And it lands other people of power who are teachers, who are future teachers, who are future theater creators. And we ask ourselves why there's no representation and justice in theater, why we don't get to show up as the beautiful, complicated, as all that we are. And this is why. It's because even when we as BIPOC artists somehow knock down all the barriers in our way to audition, to get into school, we are then shown that we don't belong there, that the education is not the same for us, that we don't get the same opportunities. And so that's what needs to change, is that, you know, you're looking around theater and you're like, oh my God, why is there this problem? And there's this problem because it's so deep rooted. It is indoctrinated white supremacy. And it's indoctrinated white supremacy that your book supports, that your book teaches, that you and your team continue to spread. And it's why I don't feel like I belong in theater. It's why I don't feel like I belong in my institution. It's why I don't feel that I am supported by either one of those things, that I'm viewed as human by either one of those things, because as you've said, my identity is seasoning. My identity is a little bit of something extra to like spice up the audition room. My identity is a quota. And that's not what I am. That's not what we are. We deserve a hell of a lot better because we are beautiful and we are powerful and we are talented.
I don't want to put a bow on this. I want to put an
No, neither do I.
I want to put an ellipses. I would like to, and I would like to keep everyone on the screen as I conclude this bad boy. Rachel, I have nothing to say. I have nothing to say because you can feel it. I have an enormous respect for you. I think you're incredible. I think you are so brave. I think you are so brave. And I think I could even throw this off to Joanna. Is there anything you heard just now that seems unfamiliar?
No. And if I may ask for a couple extra seconds of time, I wanted to go back to the idea of reparations because listening to Rachel talk made me realize what the reparations need to be. The book needs to be pulled from every single program that uses it. The book needs to be pulled. And when it comes to the power of your platform, Sheri, and what you are capable of doing, you seem incredibly passionate about cultivating a community of BIPOC leaders. And I think this is your chance because then you can work to elevate the work of a BIPOC writer who can write about this exact topic and build greater empathy bridges than a white woman can. But I think the starting point, the book needs to be pulled.
Can I also add something?
Yeah.
I would also like to contribute that the posts that you made when you saw the screenshots on Rock the Audition's page.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about that when it's my time. Yeah.
The racism isn't just in these 2 pages. It's impossible for it to only exist in these 2 pages because what these 2 pages show me is that, as we all do, you have racist indoctrination, and that doesn't just show up in these 2 pages. There are other things in your book that display this. And I also want to name that oftentimes when these situations happen, the white person usually claims that they're woke now and that everything's good now. And that, you know, if there is accountability, and often there's not, there are false claims about what that newfound wokeness means. And there's a lack of credit to where that wokeness comes from. And I want to say that all anti-racism work is built on Black bodies, on Black labor, on Black pain. And this specific situation, this enlightenment or whatever new information you have is because of my pain and because of Joanna and Davon and every single person who has stepped on this call, every single person who commented on Facebook. It's built on our labor.
Sheri, I want to pass the baton after this is over. As in, I think now that we've had this talk and we did all this, I want to see what happened on your platform. Because I think the gift of here is when I was working in politics, it's a rebranding. You have a rebranding. You have the option to rebrand. And the question is, as all eyes are on you now, what are you going to do with what you've been given? What I worry about a lot is that Rachel, let's say the book is taken away, still deals with an institution that refuses to understand, that singles her out and stuff like that. And again, coming out of one of the schools that's on your thing is the University of the Arts. That's my past school. And what I can say is, along with the $100,000 worth of debt that I've paid off, I also had to pay off the damage. The damage. And that type of student debt, it was by far harder for me. And again, not 100,000 as in like all of it came from them, but there were other things I need to relearn. That's a whole nother thing. Can we pull that up on the screen? Can I request? Napoleon's going to do that. But while the back works that out, I just want to make sure that I have a direct to the audience really quick while I have all 3 of you here. When I look through the comments of this situation and everything that was going on, what troubled me the most is that we are in an industry that is performance. And sometimes, especially after reading Tanya Pinkin's thing, it is very tough for me to understand sometimes what is real and what is performance. That's why today was very important for me, because now we get to watch Sheri, who I genuinely believe is about that work. And we get to see how she does it. Right now, Sheri, you're the prototype. You're the prototype. Rachel and Joanna are on the board.
Yeah.
And this is the gift that we have, and we get to see what oh, she wants Venmos. Oh my God. We're doing it. We're gonna get your Rachel number one. We're gonna get your Venmo when we go through this.
That's right.
Because this is very important. But one person, and I'm gonna be very controversial here. I love looking at the responses of white nonsense. What is it? White nonsense. I always forget the last name because they say such sweet things, but those likes and those comments and everything else makes it look very performative. And what makes it look even more performative is when someone tells you to come on to the show and represent and stand by your words and you become a ghost. That is my issue when it comes to allyship, when it is performative. And what I'm asking in places like white nonsense and other places of the like is to look at Rachel because she's one of many. Where are you? Where are you? And I mean this for every president of a union, every president of a business, every president of a corporation. When someone who is BIPOC yells at you and says, see me, acknowledge me, sit with me so I can understand something, it is very disrespectful. It is very harmful when you are a white ghost. When I was over in Hong Kong, they called you a guaylo. That is the way that I see you, and that is exactly what it is. We do not, none of us have time for guaylos. And just like the people who are stepping up, if you cannot step up, it is time for you to step down because, like it or not, you are part of the problem. And chiming in when it is convenient for you is not the answer. It is not, and it will never be. And this is the actual problem. So when I see somebody go, oh, I don't know, I will always drop this link of this special edition of the receipts because if Sheri can do it, regardless of if she succeeds or not, you can too. Anyone running for office, anyone running for a volunteer position, anyone that has the audacity to even call themselves an ally and cannot show up, I don't want it. Do not talk to me unless you are coming about me and everyone else correctly. That is very important. And today, what we've showed is that it can be done. So guaylos, where are you? Where are you? Rachel, can you please give your Venmo?
Oh my goodness. I have to look it up.
Joanna, why does that? Can you give your Venmo?
Yeah, that's Shavannah. Thank you for asking that. That's really lovely. I am just at Joanna, Joanna -Carpenter. Just so everybody knows, if anybody does decide to send me a little something, that will be going directly back into 8 very competitive Senate races so that we can flip the Senate blue this fall. So just putting that out there.
It's election season, so I will defer. Sheri, are you okay deferring with me? Of course we are. Rachel, you have it?
Yes, it's my first name, Rachel, Rachel -Ramirez, RAMIREZ -64.
Last thing I'm going to do is, Sheri, if you can find Rachel after this is over and defend her.
You bet it. You bet it, in every way.
I get very concerned about it. I will never forget when I was at the University of Arts, I was in something, I was speaking up, and the teacher looked at me and go, why do you always have to be the strong black man? And I went, ooh, if I want to get this A, I better shut up, which is sad because that's a form of assimilation. So if ever there's a moment, we need to continue. Because again, Rachel, I don't think you understand it right now, but you're shifting something. And this is major. And we've run horribly over time. So I want to thank you all for coming. This has been a special edition of The Receipts. And my God, there's nothing else to say. Let's just shut this bad boy out.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.